Sherman Alexie is a Spokane novelist, short story writer, poet, and filmmaker. Much of his writing draws on his experiences as an indigenous American with ancestry from several tribes. He grew up on the Spokane Indian Reservation and now lives in Seattle, Washington. Many characters in Sherman Alexie's 10 Little Indians show commonalities with Alexie's own struggles and experiences, possibly suggesting that they were inspired by said events. Corliss, Jackson, and Frank Church each embody a different experience or struggle of Alexie's life. This short video contains facts and evidence supporting these claims that Alexie has had many struggles throughout his life. You will see problems with alcohol, family life, and cultural identity as an attempt to convey this thought about Alexie.
Everyone knows the stereotype of American Indians and alcohol. It's played out on TV and in movies, but behind this stigma is a very real problem for American Indian tribal communities. Sherman Alexie is one such Indian who has struggled with alcoholism. It damaged his personal life and his relationships, and very well could have ended his career. One of Alexie's characters in 10 Little Indians, Jackson, acts as a demonstration of the damaging effects of alcoholism on everyday Native Americans. Jackson is unable to manage his finances in his quest to buy his grandmother's regalia because of his addiction. Time after time, he blows his money irresponsibly on liquor and other vices. Just like Alexie, his character finds himself in a low point. While Alexie is able to climb out of his pit, Jackson never gets there. Jackson stands as an embodiment of Alexie's own struggles and the struggles of the Indian community at large. Listen to Alexie talk about his addiction in his own words.
A case of beer a day. I could drink a fifth of tequila a day. It becomes a drinking problem when it affects your relationships with people, when it affects your job or your school, your grade point average. It's a drinking problem when you're sitting on your couch at home drinking a case of beer all by yourself, and then you pass out and grab the fifth of tequila when you wake up. So it's pretty obvious what my problem was. I wrote The Lone Ranger and Tonto, Fist Fight in Heaven, and The Business of Fancy Dancing while drunk and drinking. So there's certainly a lot to be said for my desperate years, my alcoholic years, my active alcoholic years as being the source of some pretty good work, for being the source of the two books that established and made my career. But the thing is, it's unsustainable. If you are using substances to fuel your creativity, you're going to have a very, very short artistic life. Well, I'm an alcoholic. That's what, my family is filled with alcoholics. My tribe is filled with alcoholics. The whole race is filled with alcoholics. It's, for those Indians who try to pretend it's a stereotype, they're in deep, deep denial. It's an everyday part of my life. And as a writer, I use that to write about it, partly for fictional purposes and narrative purposes, but partly with the social hope that by writing about it, maybe it'll help people get sober. And it has. I've heard from them. The social function of art is very important to me. It's not just for art's sake. I have very specific ideas in mind about what it can do. I've seen it happen. So it is writing about alcohol that helps me stay sober. And I think reading about alcoholism helps other people stay sober.
There are signs that maybe change is coming. New research published in the Journal of Drug and Alcohol Dependence suggests that American Indians are no longer suffering from abnormal rates of alcoholism. However, for Alexie, his character Jackson, and Indians affected everywhere, alcoholism is still a very real problem. As Alexie said in his interview, he writes about alcoholism to help the community at large as well as himself. This is why Jackson stands as a representation of Alexie's own alcoholism so that he can be used as an example.
Alexie's struggle with maintaining his Indian heritage while adapting to his career and modern societal norms is ever apparent in 10 Little Indians. His identity crisis left him struggling with his emotions and emotionally torn. He uses the character Corliss to convey his thoughts and share his issues. In the search engine chapter of 10 Little Indians, 19-year-old Corliss sees herself as being different from the other members of her tribe. She is solitary and bookish in a communal society of blue-collar sensibilities. After reading a few different poems by Harlan Atwater, who is also a Spokane Indian, she sets off to find her. What she finds, of course, is not what she expected, for Atwater is Indian. However, she has moved on to identifying more with societal norms. Both are then left to struggle with the question, what is being Indian? Corliss and Alexie both struggle with the same dilemma, supporting the argument that his characters reflect his personal experiences and characteristics.
The loss of a man's father can be one of the hardest events in his life. From childhood, a boy's father is almost mythical in his eyes, but as a boy becomes a man, he will eventually have to say goodbye. In 10 Little Indians, Frank Snake Church faces loss of family with both his mother and his father. Following the deaths of his parents, Frank faces severe depression and struggles to pick himself up. Similarly, Sherman Alexie suffered from depression following his father's death. The most obvious sign of Alexie's sadness is the cutting of his hair in accordance with tradition and as part of the grieving process. Just like Frank Church, Alexie struggled with the loss of his parent and still struggles today. Alexie admits that his pain fueled many of his works. Frank Church serves as yet another representation of that pain. Listen to Alexie describe the loss of his father in an interview with Bill Moyers.
Piece that we ran on my show then about you from Seattle. Take a peek.
But my dad, that alcoholic nomad, he used to leave my family for days or weeks at a time drinking and roaming. So maybe I learned how to be an insomniac because I'm still waiting for my father to come home.
What's changed for you since then?
Medication.
Did your father ever come home?
No. I cut my hair when he died. It's part of a ceremony, and you can grow it back when the grieving is over. It's been 10 years since he died. So, and I haven't grown my hair back, and I doubt I will.
He was an alcoholic.
Oh, lifelong, really.
There's one scene in your short story, War Dances, where the narrator's in the hospital with his father, who has just had surgery. He's cold, and the son is trying to find a blanket for him. Why don't you read this excerpt, War Dances.
And asked for an
Blasphemy.
extra blanket. She was a nurse, an educated woman, not a damn housekeeper. And it was never really about an extra blanket, was it? No, when people asked for an extra blanket, they were asking for a time machine. And yes, she knew she was a healthcare provider, and she knew she was supposed to be compassionate, but my father, an alcoholic, diabetic Indian with terminally damaged kidneys, had just endured an incredibly expensive surgery for what? So he could ride his motorized wheelchair to the bar and win bets by showing off his disfigured foot? I know she didn't want to be cruel, but she believed there was a point when doctors should stop rescuing people from their own self-destructive impulses. And I couldn't disagree with her, but I could ask for the most basic of comforts, couldn't I? My father, I said, an extra blanket, please.
Autobiographical?
Oh, completely. I remember when my first short stories came out and people were calling it autobiographical, and I fought it. And then 10 years later, I reread the book and thought, oh shoot, this is memoir.
Alexie admits that much of his work is biographical, and it is likely that Frank Church and 10 Little Indians fall into that category.
When you're depressed, it's like the world has ended. Even getting out of bed takes the most massive amount of effort.
As you can see, Sherman Alexie wrote 10 Little Indians with his own personal experiences in mind. He utilized fictional characters to convey his message about the struggles he endured throughout his life. This just shows how tough it was for him developing throughout his life and how he had to adapt and fight different cultural norms in his society.